And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I am here tonight, as per usual, with my co-host, Carlos. How are you doing this evening, Carlos, on a lovely Tuesday?
James, I'm doing well. I'm down here in the basements of Lowinger Library, talking Rowdies. It's going to be a good time. One game in particular, much more fun than another. I'm doing fantastic, James, as you alluded to before we started recording. The Ecuadorian national team came up with a huge result, 2-1 win at home against Uruguay. Darwin Nunez, not good. I mean, the whole Uruguayan national team has plenty of talent, but, they went to Ecuador and we shut them down, James, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling ecstatic. The boys are absolutely buzzing. Fun fact, we got that win and we're now sitting comfortably at 0 points after 2 games. We did start the qualifiers with -3 points for reasons that would take a long time to explain. But yeah, I'm happy, James. So how are you doing? Oh my God, what was that? What was that noise? The laptop's bugging. Anyway, what's going on in your life?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I don't have a World Cup qualifier or a Euro qualifier to follow today because the U.S. are playing a friendly right about now, and Scotland played a friendly earlier, which I'm going to completely skip past and not talk about because it doesn't need to be brought up any further than that. And we're going to go straight to the Rowdies games because, Carlos, we have a lot to talk about anyway, and some of it good, some of it bad, but there will be a ton of content, as they say. So last week on Wednesday, the Rowdies went away and nearly won, but unfortunately they ended up losing 3-2. But then on Saturday, the Rowdies came back home, turned things around, and won 2-1. So, I guess you literally win some and you lose some here. In our own standings, the guest spot has 23 points. Good job to all of our guests. You are on top. Eureka has 22 in second place. Carlos, you are in third with 21. And I am dragging up the rear with 17 points. So my strategy of going for the position that nobody else picked ended up being the wrong one, and I dropped all the points last week, and we're gonna have to try and make that up, but we do have a game to preview, so I have a chance to get myself back in this thing because the Rowdies are going away to San Antonio, Texas this weekend. Speaking of which, if you didn't already know, now you do. 9/16 on Saturday, the Rowdies will have, RBLR will have our own Rowdies watch party. It will be again at Berry House off the Ybor Strip, the way that we usually do it. There will be deals there on their award-winning beer, as well as a halftime swag giveaway. And we will have a pregame show, which starts at 7:45. It is an hour later than when it usually starts because the game is an hour later. And if you would like to take part in good beer, good times, and maybe some free stuff along the way from Berry House, from RBLR, from the Rowdies possibly, then please come join us. We have had a lot of fun at all of these, and we just want to make sure that you get to attend one as well. Now, with that out of the way, Carlos, let us start with a quick recap from the Memphis game. We can do a quick recap of the Louisville City game, and then we'll get into our questions and analysis.
Yes, sir, James. We'll jump into the Memphis game first real quick. Connor Sparrow in goal as per usual. No surprises there. Jordan Doherty, Forrest Lasso, and Aaron Guillen made up the bulk of that back line. Antley, Hilton, Ekra, and Perez, with Perez and Antley on the wings, followed up by Charlie Dennis, J.J. Williams, and LaCava up top. In the second half, the Rowdies... what am I doing, James? In the first half, the Rowdies took the lead first before giving up an equalizer rather quickly. And unfortunately, it was a beautiful goal from Charlie Dennis, by the way. I'm not going to let that get overshadowed by the final result, but it was a beautiful, beautiful, well-worked play by Charlie Dennis, taking his time, great composure in the box to put that ball away. But as I said, Memphis would equalize rather quickly just a few minutes later, 1-1. In the second half, the Rowdies took the lead again off of a Cal Jennings goal. Again, a really lovely play. Somehow worked around the goalie and from a really tight angle, put the ball away from the far side of the box. Lovely stuff from him. And again, we played fantastic in most of that second half. But it seemed that Memphis got control of the ball and never really let go of it. Tons of pressure in the last part of the game, and ultimately broke toward the end of the second half. It was a header that Memphis equalized with roughly in the 87th minute, I want to say 88th minute. About 5 minutes of stoppage time were added, James, and it wasn't until the 95th minute, of course, that another goal was scored, and it was courtesy of a Forrest Lasso penalty. It was a clear foul. No real debate there on whether that's a foul or not. Can't even blame the refs on that one. Nope. Connor Sparrow actually did save the penalty, as you mentioned before we started recording, James. Connor Sparrow did save the penalty. However, the ball ended up somehow in the back of the net off of what ended up technically being a Forrest Lasso own goal. A nightmarish last couple minutes for Forrest Lasso, conceding the penalty and then going down as the own goal scorer at the end. Yeah. A bit of history there with late penalties in Memphis, James, as you might recall from last year in the playoffs. I'm sure Memphis is rather satisfied that they, I guess, didn't score their penalty this time, but they scored a goal off of the penalty. Yeah. And then to top it all off, Stuart Dobson got sent off late for arguing. So I guess his head coaching record is not particularly good. Off to a good start or whatever. 3 games. I don't think he's won any of those. Unfortunate for him, but whatever. Final score 3-2 Memphis. Incredibly unfortunate. It was a missed opportunity to catch up with Pittsburgh. I'll mention the table after I talk about the Louisville game here briefly. But it was a missed opportunity. It could have jumped us into first place, even with just a draw. So 1 point, huge missed point, even with that draw, but it is what it is, James. Let's jump into the Louisville game before we break down these games as a whole here. Honestly, I'm not even going to spend too much time on the Memphis game. I have my comments, and I think it sums up my comments in a bit on the Memphis game. But the Louisville game, James, was much more fun. Mm-hmm. Again, Connor Sparrow in goal, Antley, Jordan Doherty, Kleeman, Lasso, and Guillen running back that sort of 3 in the back / 5 in the back, depending on the situation. Antley and Guillen being on the outside. Ekra in front of them, Dennis, Jennings, and Perez making up the group up top. Perez has been like in an interesting role recently here, and I want to mention that again because if you look back at the lineup for Memphis, the Memphis game, he was a bit more defensive, dropped back a bit. He's been kind of playing all over the place wherever he's been needed. Kind of debuted for the Rowdies in a more defensive role. Was interesting to see him play in his more natural, I think, attacking wing position against Louisville. I think he did a pretty decent job there. First couple minutes were certainly chaotic. Louisville actually had some of the clearer chances early. Just a minute in, they had a really good-looking corner kick that Connor Sparrow saved at point blank. Really scary stuff early in the game. But it was immediately in the second half that Louisville equalized. We were winning briefly, and it wasn't until late again that the Rowdies would take the lead through a Cal Jennings goal and win. Again, Antley also was injured in this game. There's a couple injuries that we can talk about here in a second, so maybe a costly victory, but hopefully nothing crazy leading up to a pretty big game this weekend, as you mentioned, against San Antonio. Go to the watch party, by the way. So James, that was very quick recap of those 2 games. The Memphis loss, which again was a 3-2 loss at the end of the game, and a big game against Louisville City, who were coming to play, with fire, with a passion. Always good games against Louisville, a very good team, and I think I was pretty excited by that 2-1 result at home. So 2 different games, 2 different performances, obviously 2 different results. 3 points against Louisville, nothing against Memphis, and that puts us in second place in the East currently, James, just 1 point behind Pittsburgh with a game in hand, by the way. So we still have that game in hand. Again, some room to make up ground this weekend against a really good San Antonio team. So we're going to have to just keep pace with Pittsburgh here and hope that they drop another game or so and we take advantage of that game in hand, James.
Yes, obviously that is going to come into play because if we can get to first in the East, at least, even if it's not first overall, I'm not too worried about that trophy because whether or not it should in American soccer, it mostly doesn't. That you win the whole table, you don't really get a lot out of it. So, what do we want? We want to host all of our playoff games at home. So let's at least get to first in the East. That's going to be difficult for the last couple of games that we have in this season, but we're going to get to all of that in due time, and it might not all be tonight. But yeah, Carlos, let's get into the games. Now, usually, obviously, what we would do is we would break it down half by half. There are two games here. So rather than spend we spend most of our time when we do these on the review anyway, and then our preview takes a little or a lot less time comparatively. So rather than spend an hour and a half on the two games here, let's try to condense that here, and we'll go as if the first half that we're covering is the Memphis game, and the second half that we're covering is the Louisville City game, and then take them together here. But what are your thoughts on the Memphis game first, and then we can try and break it down a little bit more past that before we move on to the next one?
Yeah. So again, I'll take a pretty broad, 10,000 feet in the air approach to looking at this game. Again, generally speaking, I think we were outplayed against Memphis.
Yes.
I mentioned that it's a weird field, and we've talked about how strange their stadium is multiple times before. It's weird to go in there and try and play a game over there, but I think generally we did a pretty good job of doing so. Yeah, a really nice Charlie Dennis goal and a really nice Cal Jennings goal that came out of being able to play our game on that field, which is really, really difficult on a literal baseball field. It was I was pretty impressed. I was expecting Memphis to play a pretty good game, but I was impressed by how we played and pretty hopeful that we would come out with the 3 points based off how we kind of started the game. That being said, if you look back at the stats, Memphis entirely outshot us. They had 4 times as many shots as we did. They had 16 to our 4. They had 7 quote unquote big chances. 7. That's a lot. Usually for these types of games, you see maybe 3, maybe 4. 7 is a lot in these FOP mob stats to designate that as 7 big chances. And they missed 5 of them, ultimately leading to 2 goals for them. We missed 1 big chance. We had quote unquote 3 big chances. So looking at it from that point of view, you could say we were outplayed, and I think we were. That being said, I think we played a pretty good game, and I don't want that to kind of be overshadowed by the stats. I think they tell a certain story, but I think if you look at it from like the game, the kind of eye test, I guess, we were playing a pretty good game, and I felt pretty happy with everything. Even when Memphis tied the game in the 28th minute.
Yep.
I didn't particularly feel like they swung the momentum and that they were just going to be like, knocking down the walls until eventually they started scoring more goals. I always felt like we were in the game even when they tied it. And again, the Cal Jennings goal 6 minutes after he got subbed in was beautiful. It was a product of how we usually play our game, just through balls and find Cal Jennings and let him work. And he did really, really well. My big observation, I think, coming down to those that last part of the second half when we were just constantly under pressure, we were just really, really getting hammered. It seemed like that goal was coming. You could kind of see that coming from a mile away, honestly, the equalizer. I wasn't particularly surprised. I was upset, obviously, but I wasn't surprised. It seemed like that goal was coming, particularly because everybody looked exhausted. Like exhausted. If you again, there's no stats to back this up, but just the eye test. You look at the guys on the field, people were like constantly putting their hands on their knees,
I
taking
would
deep
love an
breaths.
exhaustion stat.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of times you saw guys like with their heads down, hands on their knees, every time the ball went out of play, was incredible. And ultimately, I think that's what led to Memphis having so much of the ball. And ultimately what led to Forrest Lasso making that mistake and committing that penalty, which again was a very, very clear foul. I think you could partially toss that up to exhaustion as well. He looked really tired from, 20 minutes before that happened. These guys were exhausted. Memphis was very much running circles around us in terms of just like physicality. Apparently, Luis Fernando, our former Rowdies player, is just a god on the wing and was able to run up and down like, all 90 minutes. It was very much putting in a great game against us. And I think we were just kind of struggling to keep up with the pace of the game towards the end of the game. And that caught up with us eventually. I don't think there's anything like tactically like wrong with what happened. Nicky Law wasn't present, but it wasn't anything different than what he would have normally done. It looked solid. The play was solid. For a game away to Memphis, there's not much more you could ask for up until those last like 15 minutes. And that was kind of when it all went downhill. Memphis, plenty of possession, tons of crosses in. Eventually a goal would come. Memphis is not a bad team. It's not a team like Loudoun or like Las Vegas where we can afford to do that. If they have that much of the ball at home in the field that only they know how to play at, like the goals are going to come. So I think my main observation this game is just that the exhaustion caught up with us, and I wasn't too surprised by that. Lots of games, but then again, Memphis was also playing a Wednesday game, obviously. So not much else to say there. It's unfortunate that we gave up even the draw at the end because it would have put us in first place and helped us keep pace with Pittsburgh having a game in hand. It's going to make it a bit more challenging going forward, especially with a game against San Antonio coming up away and a game against Louisville away at the end of the season. Games in between that, I think, are actually pretty manageable. So I think it really just comes down to getting a good result at one of those games. But that's for looking ahead. So I'm getting ahead of myself. All these games, I think, start to count when you're adding up the points and how much you need to lock down that first place spot. So unfortunate, but I'm more excited to talk about the Louisville game in a little bit. James, reactions from the game in Memphis. Do you have anything else that I might be missing? Any other perspectives?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with your point that we were, kind of the second best team in this game, I would say. I would chalk it up, and I don't, again, without any stats, just like you said, I don't have anything to back this up, but I do think that the Rowdies were really chasing this game in terms of their, not like fitness levels. Like this, it's not that this isn't a fit team. It's that it's incredibly difficult to play 90 minutes back to back like that. And with so little, time in between, but also you have to travel. I know that Memphis was also playing a Wednesday game just like we were, but they didn't have to travel. They got to sleep in their own beds. They got to train where they usually train. They got to take the buses that they usually do from their training place. However, I don't know how they get to the field, actually. I guess the Rowdies players all kind of show up at their own time. So maybe I'm wrong about that. I assume they all went as a team bus, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. I did want to say, it looked to me like after the first 8 minutes, Memphis could be up 2-0. The Rowdies were really absorbing most of the pressure, and they were trying to create goals off of long balls, which they actually had quite a bit of success on. They were just trying to get get Memphis on the break, really. They did have success. Obviously, our goal with Sparrow to Dennis, a goalkeeper finding somebody who scores. That is Route 1 football at its finest, right? So, yeah, I mean, you can't really complain if it works that well for you. And it did up until kind of the dam broke. And the dam breaking for us was, as you said, there were players who came on towards the end of this game for Memphis. I think that they made several substitutions starting around the 70th and then all through the 80th, whatever minutes. I don't remember the exact times, but it was very interesting because we had, if I am not mistaken, we had 5 players on the bench, 6 players on the bench, including Phil Breno. But again, 2 of those are Ariel Martinez and Lucky M. Kosana. I guess those are more break glass in case of emergency guys at this point. Hal Jennings, Dayon Harris, and Freddie Kleeman were on the bench. So Memphis had a full team on their bench, and they were able to bring in Rashawn Daly in the 73rd, Samuel Carriaga and Knight Pickering in the 83rd, and then Dylan Borchak in the 90th. So all of those guys played a big role in Memphis coming back on, and that goes straight back to the thing that you were talking about with exhaustion. Getting late into the game, all the Rowdies have been doing pretty much all game is absorbing, and then if they have like a bit of possession, they will look long and try and find somebody on the run. And, that worked when it did, but it often doesn't. And then the next thing, if you kick it so far and you give the ball away, then you don't have it and you're defending again. So that can be very tiring.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that did catch up with us. And the first goal came from, I think it was Rashawn Daly who got the assist, but Knight Pickering was involved on that play. Samuel Carriaga was also involved on that play. Also, Samuel Carriaga was not somebody that, when we did the highlight for this game, we highlighted their contingent of Brazilians who are all very good and were all heavily involved as well. But one player that I did not highlight was Samuel Carriaga because I didn't know much about him. He is apparently on loan from CA Lanús in the Argentine First Division. That is, not one of the best teams in Argentina, but they're in the Argentine First Division. If you think about, a lot of the players that have come from there, obviously, I would say that the USL is not at the same level as that. So a player coming from that division to our division, that's a huge upgrade in talent for Memphis. They brought him off the bench, so just like kind of crazy there. But yeah, he was involved in the play as well. So all of these guys, all of these very fresh legs are coming in and they're reinforcing the attack that we had been facing over and over and over against Memphis. And they're adding all of these extra little runs that the players are not used to dealing with. So unfortunately, that came back to bite us in the first goal. The second one, man, I just, it was really frustrating there. It's definitely a product of us, again, conceding all of these chances that you and I have already been talking about. Like, that didn't let up in between the first goal that the second goal that Jeremy Kelly scored in the 88th minute and the goal that was in stoppage time after that. But yeah, it's really frustrating that the play breaks down the way that it does. I think Forrest Lasso just does have a lapse in concentration there, and that lapse leads to the penalty. As you said, we can argue all day, and I will argue with the referee specifically when it comes to the Louisville City game when we get there. But yeah, that one, there's no arguing. What's really frustrating beyond all of that, Stuart Dobson gets himself a red card, and that's fair enough. He's not usually the head coach anyway. He was filling in for Nicky Law, who was away for personal reasons. We think that's related to a visa. We don't know. That was reporting from unused substitutes, but Connor Sparrow makes the save on the penalty, and then we give up the goal. So it's just like it's a gut punch after a gut punch after a gut punch. The first gut punch was when we're up 2-1 and Memphis level. The second one is seeing Stuart Dobson get sent off when he had got his first yellow in the 90th plus 4 minutes, and then the 90th plus 5 is when the red card goes. So I don't know what happened there. I actually wanted to ask Dobson about that, but I just forgot to after the Louisville City game. And then the third gut punch, obviously, is when we still somehow give up the goal despite Connor Sparrow saving it. I mean, Aaron Malloy, he did get his foot on the second chance, but it was saved, and I don't think that was going in on its own. Anyway, he and Leston Paul, I will say, Aaron Malloy and Leston Paul had an incredible game in the center of the midfield for Memphis, so kudos to them. And my last point about this, after all of those gut punch, was I just love the Memphis jerseys that have "Rent to Kill" written on the front because it's a Terminix sponsorship.
I did not notice that.
I thought that was pretty funny. It seems pretty silly to have "Rent to Kill" written across your soccer jersey, but
like a hitman company, I guess.
I guess it stands out a little bit because I certainly did notice, and if I ever live in Tennessee, I will always remember Terminix. But anyway, those are my large and long thoughts about Memphis. But Carlos, I think that we've beaten this one as much as we want to because we've kind of been making the same points probably around each other. So let's go to the Louisville City game, and that one's at least a little more fun to break down, even if it's possibly around the same ideas again.
I will say on the last thing about the Memphis game was I just want to highlight how tough Cal Jennings' finish was to put us ahead 2-1. Like, we're going to mention him again. We're going to mention him again against Louisville, obviously. But I don't want to discredit like his performance against Memphis as well, because he's been on fire. And that finish was incredible. He's like running away from the goal, like in the box, and then still finds like a really, really narrow angle. Like it was perfect. It was the perfect finish. And it was so worth highlighting again. Um, Unfortunate that we won't really talk about that much or remember that goal much because of the final result. But it was a lovely finish, and it does add to that long list of recent contributions in the attack on his part. And then I'm a bit more excited to talk about his contributions here against Louisville.
I think that's fair. All right. Well, let's get to that. And yeah, the Louisville City game, Carlos, I will say, I brought this up when I was in the post game press conference with Dobson, Jordan Doherty, and Cal Jennings. They were the three that we spoke to. But it looked to me like both the first half and the second half started out very chaotic. The Rowdies were able to settle the game down and then play their own way. And I will also say this about the post-game press conference. Each of the players that we spoke to, Doherty and Jennings, they said that when I asked them, it's hard to pin down, is there a difference between the Memphis game and the Louisville City game that you can point to that our fans might be able to take away from? And each of them said something along the lines of, and, this is probably going to butcher it a little bit, but something along the lines of, we probably didn't play our game to the full intensity that we could have against Memphis, and we played it a lot more on the front foot in the second game against Louisville City. I agree with that by and large. Again, minus those first couple of minutes of chaos in the first and the second half, I think that the Rowdies did generally dominate the game against Louisville City. There were obviously hiccups here and there. That's how soccer goes. But I think that they were able to play their game. Jordan Doherty was sat at the back again because Lewis Hilton has come back. And since then, we've seen Jordan Doherty step a little bit deeper. I think that his ability to take the ball from the back line and carry it forward and enter the midfield himself and then be part of that unit, I think that is starting to look like a very interesting little wrinkle to our tactics. But yeah, I think additionally, though, we did impose ourselves on the game a lot more versus Louisville. We controlled the ball a lot more against Louisville City. And as much as they did score in one of those periods of chaos, which we'll get to, this was a much better performance all around. And my last brief and opening statement, not so brief, obviously, is that I think the referee was incredibly lenient towards Louisville City in this game. I thought that while I was watching it live, and usually when you watch a game the second time, you kind of mellow out. I think the second time when I watched it again, I was like, I am more mad at the referee for the way that this game went. But anyway, yeah, Carlos, what were your first impressions of this game against Louisville?
Yeah, I mean, early impressions, just watching the game from my place over here. First thing you notice is just like you said, the chaos of how that game started. I was fully convinced on that early header that ball was going in, and my heart dropped. Luckily, that did not happen. Connor Sparrow had another great game. By the way, we didn't mention him more than we should have against Memphis, but Connor Sparrow had a fantastic game against Memphis as well. And like you said, he got on the assist. Like he got that assist and got on the score sheet technically, so that's pretty crazy. Had another great game against Louisville, so he had back-to-back good performances. Really lovely to see. And I was pretty content with the first half. Like even before that goal came along for us, it felt like a pretty typical Tampa Bay Rowdies versus Louisville game, which is a good thing. It doesn't really need to be like, I guess, we don't have to be on the ball like 90% of the time and just kind of like waiting for them to break like we did against Hartford. It's not really the type of game you expect against Louisville,
right?
Because they're a much better team, so you expect them to come up and try to make something happen. That's fine. That's good. And I think as far as like our defending went, as far as our containing their attack went, I think we did a really good job. Their main like danger guys didn't really get too involved as far as I could tell, honestly. In most of the first half, the stats I think back up at what you mentioned, that we kind of outplayed them. Pretty tight game in terms of shots. Shots were even. We had one more shot on target than they did, but the big chances stat, which I love referencing on FOPMob because it's pretty accurate. Like the high XG opportunities, right? Were in favor of the Rowdies. We had, sorry, let me check back. We had 4 of those. We scored on 2 of them. Louisville did not have any quote unquote big chances. So I think that's demonstrative of the kind of defending the tactics we laid out against a really good Louisville team. It's good stuff. If you're containing them like that, minimizing their expected goals and everything, it just is indicative of a successful game plan, a tactical, I think, master class. I love saying that word. It was just a really good like layout from the squad. And from, I guess, the coach, who was technically, it was Eric Wild, right? Was the head coach for this game, which is just wild, no pun intended. So it was pretty fun to see that. And, the Cal Jennings goal the first goal was fun to watch. It was kind of a fluke, but it was at the same time like a mistake from their goalie. But
I will say really quickly, I'll jump in there.
Yeah.
And I asked Cal Jennings about what his thought process was for that goal. And he just said his first thought was he was trying not to get absolutely run over by the goalkeeper. And he said if he avoided that, then he was probably going to get a goal. And so it turned in.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. He's right. Whoever, sorry, I'm forgetting the name of their goalie, the Louisville goalie, but I mean, you got to commit, buddy. Like he came out and then just
Pick
stood
one,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, like he came out. If you're coming out that far, you have to go for the ball. I mean, he just froze. He froze. Like he was gonna try and use his hands. You see, like if you look back, there's a moment where he goes back into like the standard goalkeeping position, spreads his hands out wide. Like you can't use your hands that far out. I don't know what he would have gotten a red card or something at that point. So anyway, Cal Jennings did his thing. Literally just walked around him. Incredible first touch. And again, the Louisville cone of a goalie just stood there. And Cal Jennings took advantage and walked the goal in, quite literally, just tapped it in. It was very much how we've played our game offensively recently. It was a long ball from Aaron Guillen to Cal Jennings, and that game plan has been working. Just find Cal Jennings up there somewhere, and he'll probably make something happen.
On his own sometimes.
No, literally. I mean, he's had some crazy left-footed finishes, 2-on-1 against Hartford, if you remember, at the end of the first half. And that's just one I'm thinking off the top of my head. Did it against Memphis in the game we just talked about. Just kind of took 2 guys on plus a goalie and found a narrow angle. Like he's on fire right now, quite literally. So overall, fantastic first half, I would say. We had a couple decent chances, and then we kind of scored on that, little dink of a goal. Great pass from Aaron Guillen. And then a silly mistake from Louisville that I'm sure is really frustrating for their fans, but whatever. And I think we justifiably took a 1-0 lead. I think we had better chances. We had more chances. Louisville certainly had a couple of their own, but I think we deserve to be up 1-0 at the end of the half. You have any comments on the first half, James? Anything else I might have missed?
Well, one thing that I wanted to get into was the decisions from the referees, especially obviously the main referee in the middle. I have notes. So Carlos Mogel, very good young homegrown player for Louisville City. He might not be a Josh Winder type of talent, but I do like him a lot, and I think that he's going to go up places, higher than the USL, if you want to look at it that way. Anyway, in the meantime, quite the pest and a very annoying player to play against. He was kicking us over and over. I don't know if there were multiple times that players kicked. It was mostly Lewis Hilton and Charlie Dennis. I don't know if they hate Englishmen. I did today, so maybe I get it. But at the same time, it was so frequent that I was like, I cannot believe that Louisville City did not end up going into the halftime interval down a man, because Carlos Mogel got a very early yellow card. And then he was involved in at least 2 other plays that were the exact same foul. And I'm like, you gave the one, give another. You can't pick and choose if you've already decided that this is a yellow card. Unfortunately, later on in the first half, I don't remember if this was Mogel or if this was someone else. I don't think I wrote it down. But Connor, no, it was Paolo Del Piccolo. I did write it down. Paolo Del Piccolo. He took Antley out at one point in the first half, and his tackle, it looked to me like it was studs studs on the top of Antley's foot. So like the bottom of his foot is on top of Antley's, and I thought that we call that like a toe or a foot break, because those bones in your feet are not, I guess they're not very fragile, but that is a hard one because the metal that's on your studs, that's where it can really break those bones. Luckily, obviously, Antley got up and he kept playing. And then, as we all saw, then he comes off. So, is Connor Antley going to be back for the next game? Obviously, we all hope so. At this point, I don't know. Unfortunately, we're not doing the pregame press conferences with the Rowdies this year. I don't know if we're not invited to those or if they are not happening. But yeah, it's very unfortunate that he is going to be another doubt after we've had all of these issues all this season. And finally, we get Lewis Hilton back. Finally, Jan Ekra, who was missing a couple of games, is back. Jake Araman, who was missing a couple of games again, he's back. And now Connor Antley is out. And we're like, okay. So we don't know about Connor Antley. And, I think the referee could have really stepped in and actually played a role in that. Fair enough. Let's move into the second half here and start it off with the next moment of chaos. And the next moment of chaos, unfortunately, there is a great run from Wilson Harris. It's just that it's so early, I guess, that Aaron Guillen wasn't properly warmed up. And the next thing, he falls down with a hamstring injury. As he's falling down, Wilson Harris continues to carry the ball and obviously scores. So that's frustrating. But if we lose Aaron Guillen and Connor Antley, I just want to bring up my personal stats chart for the season real quick. And I should have done this up beforehand, so I apologize to anyone listening. But the Rowdies stats for the year, we have played 28 games so far. Connor Antley has played in 27 of those games, and he started 25 of them. Aaron Guillen has played in all 28 games, and he has started all 28 of those games. If we lose these two players, these are stalwarts of our defense. This is like potentially, and maybe it's already catastrophizing, but it is potentially catastrophic stuff to lose these two guys on top of everything else. And Jordan Doherty has been able to step back into the defense. Thank God for that. Dayon Harris is back, so maybe he can play as a right wing back. Thank God for that. It's a very big problem if either of those two players is out for a longer period than even one game. I'm not sure where else we go from there for some of those positions. Anyway, that is my catastrophizing. Carlos, let's finish up with the Louisville City game and how it went after the goal that they friggin' hurt our Aaron Guillen on.
Yeah, after that, James, I mean, you're right to be pretty concerned about that situation, because then you'd be it'd really just be scratching by with whoever you got left to play defense. It'd be like Lasso, Kleeman, and Doherty back three with wingbacks. You put Dayon Harris on the right, and is Armin still injured? No, Armin's not injured anymore. He came back in this game. So you can put Armin out there. You can put Joshua Perez to play wingback again if needed. There's ways to make it work, but it would be unfortunate to lose two of the guys that have been most reliable. I'm not sure how. I guess we're not sure how serious those injuries were. They were serious enough for them to get taken out of the game. So I guess we'll have to see on Saturday if they're with the team, they're on the bench, if what the situation is. Time will tell, right? It's the only thing you can do now. Long story short, moving into the rest of the game, we continued doing our thing despite all the injuries. Continued creating chances despite losing Antley and Guillen. Dayon Harris got involved. He did a pretty good job coming in for Antley. Again, two different types of players, but both played. Both add their own kind of different talents to the field. And Deion Harris adds, I think, a much more, I guess, offensively minded approach to that wing. So that was fun to see. He got involved. Cal Jennings and him together up there are pretty interesting once they get involved together in the attack. Cal Jennings had a couple decent chances, couple decent looks. Louisville had a decent chance of their own. They had nothing crazy, but a couple moments that might scare Connor Sparrow if he wasn't ready. But it wasn't until the 60th minute, James, so not too much later after the Louisville goal, about 15 minutes later, that Cal Jennings, again, the name I keep bringing up, would get involved and eventually score the go-ahead goal that would turn into the winner. It was a beautiful, beautiful ball from the left wing. It was Jake Arman, again, the player I just mentioned, who questioned if he might be injured. So I'm an idiot for forgetting he actually got the assist. It was Jake Arman that got the assist there. It was absolute laser of a ball. Kept it low, and it just fell to Jennings in front of the box. Jennings did an incredible job on this goal of redirecting the ball with the inside of his foot. Was left of the goalpost and managed to redirect it in the air, kind of chip it up and over the Louisville goalie into the top right corner. It was really impressive, and it's really, really tough to do. I'm almost like skeptical if he even meant to do that. Like he might have just mishit it, and it ended up beautifully working out. But it's just a great, great, well-worked play. After that, James, not too much. Connor Sparrow came up big, 2 minutes later. So, I mean, that was an important moment. Had a pretty good game again, like I said. Got involved when he needed to. I mean, we held out. I mean, we did our thing. We did our work. And I was pretty happy with how the rest of the half went. Didn't have to worry too much. Again, Louisville didn't create any particularly dangerous chances, a couple moments, but again, Connor Sparrow was lively and ready at any of those shots. Definitely not a situation like against Memphis where we got tired. Louisville had a lot of the ball that just didn't happen like it did against Memphis. So it was fantastic to see. Could have even had a couple more goals, and I think 2-1 is more than a just result. Aaron Guillen looked to be walking around on his own power at the end of the game. So that was a fun little note to mention. Nothing too major, I guess. He was able to walk around. But yeah, I mean, that's the end of the game, James. A 3-point result. Can't complain too much there. Something to look at this weekend is who's on the bench, who's on the field. We might be dealing with a couple more injuries, but hopefully not. Anything else to mention on this game?
Yeah, I think that the way that we held it out against Louisville City, obviously, you already mentioned it. I think that we played our game very well, just as Cal and Jordan Doherty mentioned. I think that they, pointed it out even better than I could. The Rowdies just did a lot better in this one in terms of actually seeing the game out. And that doesn't mean, taking attack after attack after attack and just waiting until you can get a counter attack every so often. They actually produced some plays of their own along the way. So yeah, I enjoyed that. Also, quick shout out to the family of Jordan Doherty. I don't know if you guys are regular listeners, but I ran into them at locals before the game. They were all very nice, and there were a couple of people who were there for their second or third time, whatever it was, and there were some people there who were in their first go round at Al Lang Stadium. So yeah, I'm hopeful you guys had a great time. It was obviously a great game to watch, and I think that Jordan Doherty had just as good a game in this one as he has pretty much all season. So I will throw that little shout out to him and his family, who are all very courteous. Yeah, Carlos, anything else, or do you want to look at these two games together with the regular season, or do you want to move to man of the match? I'll leave it to you.
No, I'll just say concluding thoughts on both of these games. Missed opportunity against Memphis, combining that game and any point, if we got 1 point from that with the result on Saturday, would have put us into first place on goal differential if it was a draw, on points if we had won, if we had held out and got that result. So definitely a missed opportunity there. We've mentioned that a couple times this season, but it's not entirely unexpected that a team, even as good as the Rowdies and how well they've been playing, has a hiccup or two along the way. It is a human team. They're not robots. So I'm not particularly shocked that we dropped points, or all 3 points against Memphis. It was actually a game where you might expect that to happen. challenging place to play on the road. Again, not because of like a crazy atmosphere or anything. I think it was actually a pretty sparse crowd, but it was certainly a weird field, and I think that takes a toll. More impressed by how we played against Louisville. I think that says more about the team than the Memphis game did, especially against a better team, against Louisville, who always seems to, really go punch for punch with us. That one was about as good as it gets without, scoring 5 goals or anything. So that being said, overall thoughts, happy with how the week went. Could have been better, but we're still within punching distance of first place with that game in hand. Although things get a little bit challenging, the window is very much open for us to jump through if we, seize that opportunity.
I agree with that. All right. I don't have any extra things that I want to add on. I think that you summed it up very well. So I will instead say, Carlos, who is your man of the match for each of these 2 games?
Yeah, I'll just say this without much elaboration because I don't have much to say about the Memphis game. Charlie Dennis was my man of the match. He had a fantastic goal. He's always involved in the attack. Any attack we
He
did
is.
have, he was probably there. And he had a lovely, lovely goal against Memphis. And I don't want that to get overlooked because of the result. It was really, really impressive stuff. How much he was able to hold up. The composure in the box was just awesome. So yeah, easily my man of the match for that game against Memphis. And I won't say anything else because I want to move on to the Louisville game one more time and say that my man of the match was, of course, the double goal scorer, Cal Jennings. That makes it 3 goals this week, 3 goals in 2 games. He had that second goal against Memphis and 2 goals against Louisville, the 2 goals that would help us win that game. Just lovely performance from him, just always chasing the ball. Very much like JJ Williams and him kind of share that trait. They just kind of don't stop running. They'll follow that ball wherever it goes. And that's kind of what you want in a player like him. High energy, composed in the box. And just a good finisher, obviously. That's what you need in a striker, and that he's demonstrated he can do that. He's demonstrated he can dribble. He's fast, and he's physical when he needs to be. So he's been performing really, really well in this game. I think captured all of that and all the skills he brings to the Rowdies. Easily my man of the match for the Louisville game.
Okay, there you go. Well, I will say I think that by nature of the way that we played, our defense was the most important part of our game when it came to Memphis. So with that in mind, my man of the match was Connor Antley. I think that he did very well in this one, in particular, to try to facilitate the attacks that we had. Obviously, like I've already stated, those were fewer and farther between than either of us would have wanted, but so it goes. He still did very well in this one. He and Connor Sparrow, but I ultimately gave it to Connor Antley on this one. In the second game against Louisville City, I think that someone who has come back recently and tried to integrate himself into the team again. He, got off to a slower start to that than we would have wanted as well, but it's kind of starting to come together. And I think that he's going to be crucial for the next couple of games because of the injuries that we potentially have. So his ability to marshal things is going to be important. And I think that was again on display in this past game. So for Louisville City, I want to take Lewis Hilton. He was very good. And I mean, honestly, there were a lot of players who were very good. I think Jordan Doherty was very good at the back. I think Connor Sparrow also had a good game again. Obviously, Cal Jennings was fantastic in this one. But yeah, I will take Lewis Hilton overall. So that is where we will go with our man of the match for both of these games. Now, Carlos, I do want to say, obviously, you are not in Tampa area, but if you were this upcoming Saturday, what would you possibly be doing? Do you have anything coming up?
On Saturday, September 16th, James, I would be at nowhere else other than Berry House for the RBLR Sports Rowdies watch party. Should be another blast as per usual. Can't really get better than this. Saturday night with everybody in the Rowdies family. Show up, 8:30 game against San Antonio. Plenty of beer pitcher specials, halftime swag giveaways. Again, doesn't really get much better than that. Berry House Beer Company, 7:45 p.m. live pregame show. It should be a good time. I had a great time when I've been. James has had a great time when he's been, and everybody who's been around has been just really, really happy when they've shown up, and more happy when the Rowdies, I guess, play better. And hopefully that happens this weekend with a result that helps us in the table. But I think everybody can enjoy in the camaraderie of an RBLR sports watch party. Yeah, where else would you rather be than Ybor on a Saturday night to watch the Rowdies?
Absolutely. And as you said, I have had a good time, and I will have a good time this upcoming weekend. Yeah, we would love for everybody to come, and I will be making sure that all of you hear about it a lot more on social media. Don't you worry. But all right. With that, Carlos, actually, if you could please take us into the preview for the upcoming game that we will all be
Yeah,
watching while we're at Berry House.
exactly. Yeah, let's jump into that preview, James, before we start to wrap up this week's episode. Yeah, this weekend the Rowdies travel out west to play the reigning champs, San Antonio Football Club. The Tampa Bay Rowdies are in second place in the Eastern Conference, like I mentioned earlier, with 53 points from 28 games played, 1 game in hand, and 1 point behind our first place counterparts in Pittsburgh. By the way, more points than the teams out west. San Antonio is in second place in the West with 50 points from 29 games. The first place team out west. I just had this pulled up, James. Why am I blanking right now? Um, Give me a second. I literally had it pulled up in the first place team out west is Sacramento with 51 points. So we're currently ahead of both top two Western Conference teams with our 53 points. San Antonio is a really, really good team. Obviously, they're in a fantastic position in the Western Conference, but they haven't won since August 16th. They only lost one in their last five. San Antonio generally like to line up with a 5-3-2 formation with Jordan Farr in net. Definitely one of the best goalkeepers in the USL. In front of him, you have Shannon Gomez, Carter Manley, Fabian Garcia, Mitch Tainter, and Ismaila Jome. The midfield will probably be Rida Zuhir, Jorge Hernandez, and Jacori Hayes with Santiago Patino, and Tani Lawasier up top. He is definitely the danger. He has 14 goals in the USL this year. Zuhir has 8. Both are on loan from MLS squads. Hernandez has 9 assists, while Oluwasiye has 5. Zuhir has 3 assists as well. Definitely a team with plenty of talent spread out across their offensive units. Hernandez leads the way with big chances created, and Farr has 8 clean sheets so far. Last year, San Antonio did win the whole thing. They beat Louisville City in the USL final, and they did so with a very strong defense and fast counterattacks. Very similar play style this season. Can expect some of that this weekend as well. The other thing they have is depth. They definitely wouldn't have an injury crisis, kind of like we might this weekend. We'll see what happens. Point being, in summary, San Antonio is a great team. They are kind of solid from top to bottom. Fantastic goalie, great defense, and a very, I guess we can say, even attack up and down. Tons of people contributing to the squad. That being said, they haven't won since August 16th. It was against a weak RGV FC team at home. Since then, they drew against Monterey Bay at home. They drew against Pittsburgh at home. They drew against RGV away. Very surprising result there. Lost against FC Tulsa away, and then tied against Colorado Springs Switchbacks away. So they've had 3 straight away games, 2 draws and a loss there. They'll be happy to be back home. So they'll definitely be looking to get a good result and get back on track there. Hopefully we can maintain that, I guess, recent pattern in their last 5 of keeping them winless and getting out of there with at least a point. Going to be tough, though. They'll be happy to be back home, but they've certainly dropped points to much worse teams this season and still are in second place, which shows you how well they've been doing throughout the season. To be able to drop that many games, drop that many points, and still maintain their spot, very, very impressive stuff. James, what do you think about this game? It's going to be tough. I think I can say that for you. What do you think our chances are, and how do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I think that our chances are certainly good. I will say that, but it's going to be extremely difficult. Something that I was thinking about today was, let's say that Aaron Guillen and Connor Antley are out. They're probably our fastest defenders. And if San Antonio are known for their, very fast, their lightning counterattacks, that's going to be a problem. I would say that Jordan Doherty is a very good player who's probably not the most speedy. That being said, he's probably faster than both Freddie Kleeman and Forrest Lasso. So who are we going to put at the back that's going to, take care of this problem? You kind of have to. This is the way that I think Pep Guardiola has really tried to figure out his teams recently. Is he has been, sorting out ways to prevent counterattacks, because obviously that is when most of the goals in soccer are scored, are in transition on counterattacks. So if that's the case, then what are we going to do about that? Obviously becomes the big issue. I'm worried about, our counterattacks. I'm worried about that, not only because San Antonio is very good at that, but because it has been a problem for us in a couple of other games. And we have noticed, unfortunately, problems creep in here and there with the defense. Forrest Lasso had a game to forget against Memphis. I assume that is going to be something that we can probably not expect to happen. I think that was the only own goal that we've given away all season, if I'm correct about that one. But it's going to be, regardless of whether or not we give up an own goal in this game against San Antonio, it's going to be a dogfight to keep them out of the net. And if they're at home, they have had very good attendance this season too. I was looking at, I think, John Morrissey's stats about attendance today. So yeah, it's just, there are a lot of tough things going into this game, not least of which is the fact that we're going to be in San Antonio. So I hope to God that either Connor Antley or Aaron Guillen are in this game, if not both of them. And if Aaron Guillen did pull his hamstring, I'm not too sure where we're going after that. But Carlos, that's what gives me the biggest lump in my stomach, I suppose. And we're gonna have to figure out, where to go from there. Do you have any other highlights you want to get to before we do our predictions?
I will say maybe this is kind of like spoiling how I think the game's going to go or how I feel it might go, but San Antonio's a really good team. They've scored 2 goals in their last 5 games. I think that's pretty significant based on how well they were doing earlier in the season. 2 goals in 5 games for them is not great. They actually went 3 games in a row without scoring any goals. It was 3 straight 0-0 draws, which I think is indicative of their defense as well and how well they can play, even if the team overall is not playing great. But they've also dropped points both times they played against RGV this season, and Rio Grande Valley is a really bad team. Maybe they just have their number, but there's a couple situations where I'm looking at them and being like, yeah, I mean, there's vulnerabilities here. They lost to Tulsa away as well. We beat Tulsa away. Just looking at common opponents doesn't really mean much, I guess, in soccer, but there's something to say there about how they've dropped points against worse teams. But they will be playing to win against the Rowdies. They're going to be playing. I think you'll very much kind of see them matching up to the Rowdies. It's not too surprising when really good teams kind of play down to another team's skill level. Maybe that's kind of what happened against RGV, but they've dropped numerous points against teams that are pretty bad or much worse than them, teams that we've had good performances against, like against Tulsa. So it's going to be tough, but I'm still relatively confident that we can go in there getting a result, especially with the full week of rest. We don't have a Wednesday game or anything. We can figure out who's injured, who's not, and make something happen. Hopefully Nicky Law is back and brings some level of consistency back to this team. We'll see what happens. That being said, I'm optimistic. I'm not too concerned that we can't walk out with at least a draw or anything.
Well, if you're so optimistic, Carlos, I'm going to have to ask you to put your money where your mouth is and give us your prediction.
I will say that I'm going with a 2-1 win for the Rowdies in San Antonio.
Ooh, okay.
There's no way that I don't see us shutting out San Antonio, especially if we're kind of going to be down at least one guy between Antley and Guillen. I'm not again, I just looking at the prior results, I think form is pretty important in soccer. At some point you have to break out of bad form. But I'm not sure that's going to happen against the Rowdies. Again, they've only scored 2 goals in their last 5 games for how good they are. It's bound that they break out of that bad stretch eventually. I'm just not sure it's going to happen um, in this particular game. And I think we're going out expecting it to be a tough game too. So I think we're ready to get a good result.
Okay. Well, I do think that we will get a result out of this. I'm not entirely sure that we will get a win here. So I will take the 2-2 scoreline and call a point for the Rowdies. Along those same lines, producer Eureka has chosen a 1-1 draw, and he notes we will be happy about it. And our guest at Casey Courtney on Twitter, that is Casey_Courtney, on Twitter, I should say, that she has also chosen a 1-1 draw for the Rowdies. So I am, I guess there's a lot of love for the draws this week. I'm really hopeful that we get a 2-2 because I really need to make up some points here. But
Yeah.
there you have it, folks. If it's not one of these score lines, then you know what? I'm just going to tell you it's not even real. But
Yeah. No, like I will say, like, I was totally feeling a draw as well, but I looked at the notes and saw everybody else was picking a draw, so it made me be a little bit more optimistic and take the win there. I would be happy with the draw as well. It puts us, keeps us at, on pace with
yeah,
Pittsburgh, and that's fine. I wish we could have done that against Memphis, but it's okay. Past is in the past. I'd be happy with the draw. I really San Antonio's a good team. They're not playing that well right now, and I think we can take advantage of that. We play, up to we play down to opponents' skill level sometimes, but I think we can also play up to an opponent's skill level,
I agree.
And get a good result. So maybe it's being like too optimistic, but I mean I don't know. It's our podcast. I guess I can just be really optimistic if I want to. So,
You might as well be.
there you have it. I'm taking that win, and you know what? If it happens, call me a god. Whatever. I'm ready. I'm ready for that result.
All right. Well, with that, we will close out our preview and move on to our brief extra time segment and say congratulations to Rico Rosarena, who was called up to the Cuban national team for their CONCACAF Nations League games. He actually just played earlier tonight. The first game that he played for them, he started in a 0-0 draw, so a clean sheet for him. Tonight, he started again. It was a 1-0 win, so he keeps 2 clean sheets, earns 4 points. And Cuba, as far as I'm aware, is sitting very pretty in their Group B group of the CONCACAF Nations League. I don't remember, or excuse me, it is the League B, and I think they're in the second group of that, but it is the second league. They have different tiers, so I've already butchered it, but congratulations to Rico Rosarena. And I will turn it over to you, Carlos, because I think you have a point to make about some internationals going on at the moment.
I will just say South American qualifiers are also happening right now, as well as like Euro qualifiers. South American World Cup qualifiers are happening, and Ecuador won, and I'm really happy, and you should be too, because Ecuador national team is so likable, and they're so full of just like really great characters and good people.
And a 16-year-old.
And a literal 16-year-old who started and debuted for the national team in a World Cup qualifier against Uruguay and got an assist on the game-winning goal. So just crazy stuff. And a really, really likable team, and obviously likable for me personally. But yeah, I mean, that's happening as well. Take a look at that if you're interested. Tons of interesting stuff and storylines happening in South American soccer. And last but not least, James, before we wrap up the show, I will remind everybody one more time that this Saturday, there is an RBLR Sports Watch Party at Berry House with a halftime giveaway, swag, Berry House beer specials. It's going to be a good time. Come see the pregame show starting at 7:45 with, again, kickoff starting at 8:30 p.m. No better place to be on a Saturday night in Tampa than Ybor. No better place to be in Ybor than the RBLR Sports Watch Party for this game against San Antonio. Really, really big game, James. So it should be a good time, and it'll be even more fun watching it, with the Rowdies family there.
That's right. So please do join us. Like I said, there are other watch parties going on most of the times that we are having a watch party. But as far as I'm aware, these are the only ones that are going on in Tampa on this side of on the Tampa side. I guess I'm not on the Tampa side anymore. I am now south of the Skyway. But yeah, if you do live on the Tampa side of the bridge, then please go and join us at Berry House. It will be a great time. It has been for the last several of them. We are doing them monthly at this point. So yeah, we're trying to make a thing out of it. And I think that you can not only add to that, obviously, but I think that you will enjoy it if you come and take part. So yeah, there are a lot of benefits while we're at it, including some beer pitcher specials and some free stuff. So yeah, we will see you soon. Now, I think we are done with everything tonight. So thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We appreciate when you do and stick with us all the way to the end. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can get at me if you'd like on Twitter. I am at RBLR James K. What about you, Carlos?
At Carlos GPA10 on Twitter. Find me tweeting about today the world of South American qualifiers, in particular how happy I am about Ecuador winning. But we're back to regularly scheduled Rowdies content this week.
There we go. And you can like and subscribe to our podcast, of course, where you can get the full experience of us on YouTube. You can see our beautiful faces. If you don't want to see our beautiful faces because you're some kind of curmudgeon, you don't have to. You can just listen to us. We are also on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app. We are on Apple and Google Podcasts. We are everywhere that you are and you want to be. So we will see you soon for one more win in the bag, I guess, and another watch party coming up. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.